So my name is Catherine Sandoval. I'm a law professor at Santa Clara University School of Law in the Silicon Valley. It's a Jesuit university in the Silicon Valley. And I also had the opportunity to be a commissioner of the California Public Utilities Commission for 6 years. So I just completed my term in January. So through that work had other opportunities as well to help to expand broadband and internet access and do various work to close the digital divide. So I've been involved with CETF since the beginning. I was on the first Board of Expert Advisors and at the very first Board of Expert Advisors meeting 10 years ago. So it's been really wonderful to see how the organization has expanded and to help CETF accomplish its mission of first identifying what were the gaps in California. I think when CETF started that there were a lot of people who didn't understand that there were broadband gaps in California. And CETF did really excellent work in also commissioning very good studies with the Public Policy Institute of California to document the internet gaps, particularly for Spanish-speaking households, for example, for low-income households, looking at also immigrant households, the rural-urban gap, and also Native American reservations. And so CETF really did a great job in early on identifying some of the key targets that California would have to get to close the gap. And so for me, both as a scholar, as a law professor, and somebody who had been active in this field for a long time, I worked for 6 years for the Federal Communications Commission during the Clinton administration. So I'd been involved in the early years of E-rate. So getting this information about what was really going on the ground, what were the gaps, what was the roadmap really was absolutely critical to being understand what we needed to do in terms of public policy, investment, activism, and scholarship to help to close those gaps. So part of my passion for this issue, reflects not just the origins of my family, but the origins of many California families. My family started when we lived in a mobile home park in East LA, and then we moved up to the barrio where we got to live in an apartment. And so, I grew up at a time when the big deal for access to information was the bookmobile coming around. And as I grew up, I got to grow up seeing the internet really start to emerge into the public and become more available, although it was initially very limited in its availability. And I was lucky enough to go to one of the colleges that had the internet. From attending a public high school in Montebello, I was able to go to Yale, which had the internet. But it was curious that even at Yale, which had the internet, and I did use internet for some things, and I had friends who, used the blinking green screen internet, that, for example, in my computer science class, where I took APL and made a snake game, we never used the internet in our computer science class. And so now I'm a law professor at Santa Clara University, and in fact last night I was invited to be a guest lecturer at a computer science class for freshmen at Santa Clara. And they're studying not only computer science and how to code, they're coding in C++, but they're also looking at the social impact of computing. So when I told them that I took computer science in a class that never used the internet, their jaws were just on the floor, right? They could not imagine taking computer science. They couldn't imagine what the point was, right? Or how you do it without the internet. But sadly, there are still children in California who are in exactly that situation. And one of the things that I've been writing about and had the opportunity to work on with CETF and as a commissioner of the California Public Utilities Commission is looking at some of those gaps. Whether it is like bizarre coverage gaps so that you get even in urban areas, places where the internet just isn't accessible, just doesn't work, right? And this happens in places in LA. There are places where you just really can't get, especially mobile internet. Or where you have affordability gaps, people can't get on because they can't afford it, or you have knowledge and training gaps, or there are still the physical access gaps. And so we see, like one of the things I'm writing about is the electricity gap on Native American reservations. So Native American reservations are the places in America that most lack access to electricity. Of course, sadly, Puerto Rico is now a new special situation that really is emblematic of what's been going on Native American reservations for the last 100 years. but where the Rural Electrification Administration connected millions of American homes and farms, they largely skipped Native American reservations. Because when you also look at the rural electrification guidelines, Native American tribes were not eligible to apply for the loans. And so neither the federal government nor the state governments made it their business to connect Native Americans to electricity. So there are tribes like the Yurok tribe is one of the tribes in California that has huge electrical access gaps. They're by the Klamath River, and actually got a necklace there that's an abalone necklace, just like your beautiful necklace. And they're California's largest tribe. There are 6,000 of them. And because they don't have electricity, it's impossible to have the internet. And so I've had the opportunity to work with the tribe and visit there several times, and they have worked very hard for the last 25 years to try to expand the electric grid, and they've made it their business to get the grants and do what was necessary to build the infrastructure. And CETF has also been a part of that, of supporting their work to build this infrastructure, both for electricity and for telephone service. Because these are interconnected infrastructures where you can't have modern day communication service without electricity. It doesn't work without electricity. So understanding those gaps and how we can also support, dealing with these very physical gaps has been critical. And so the Broadband Consortia for Humboldt County has worked very closely with the Yurok tribe, with the Karuk tribe, the Hupa, and a bunch of tribes, as well as all different stakeholders in the county, and making sure that they're also part of the CETF family so that everybody in California understands the gap, understands what they need, and how we can support their work to close this gap. And it's so important for the children, right, and for the tribe, because there are children who attend the elementary school there, the Jack Norton Elementary School, which today runs on diesel generators. And so they're exposed to high levels of pollutants, the particulate matter 2.5, because of the exposure to the diesel generator instead of electricity. And the last time I was there in January, they didn't have functioning satellite because satellite doesn't work very well in this beautiful forest that they're in. They were having a lot of interference problems. In order to take the tests that children have to take in California for the Common Core, they have to be bused to another place to take the test that has electricity, so they can even practice with the computers and be able to they have to demonstrate competence just like any other kid. So right now they're in a situation where when they're doing their homework, there are people that are doing their homework at night using kerosene and candlelight, and and they and their parents will sometimes drive, especially on the weekends, they'll drive 45 minutes each way to get to a place that has mobile internet service so that they can make a call or that they can get to a computer. They want to participate in the modern economy, and they also get it that it's critical to being able to maintain their culture and to perpetuate it into the future. So, I'm really impassioned to work with communities, whether they're rural communities like in the Central Valley, who also there are big gaps. The farm fields are also some of the places that are disconnected. The Rural Electrification Administration connected the farmer's house, but not the farmer's field. And so this has left gaps that have important implications for not only agriculture, but for water use and for farm workers. So there's so many gaps that we need to better understand so that then we can work together and figure out, okay, what do we need to do to bridge these physical gaps? What do we need to do to bridge the enabling gaps, like where electricity is an enabling gap or where communications is an enabling gap? And then how do we also address the training gaps, the affordability gaps, all of the other things so that we can achieve a world where people can connect, can communicate, can engage. Because one of the things that we see, and this is something I talked about last night to the students, is that if you look at, compared to the time when I was in college, right, so many aspects of American life are intertwined with the internet, in fact, dependent on the internet, right? It's actually more difficult to think about sectors which are not intertwined with the internet to figure out what they are, right? And so as we look at what is intertwined and dependent on the internet, right, it's now education, okay? Whereas I took computer science without using the internet, that's not gonna happen today, right? It's healthcare, it's government services, it's commerce, it's manufacturing, it's jobs and professions of every type. It's water, it's energy, right? It's air quality, it's agriculture, all of these different things, culture, media, are infused with and dependent on the internet. And so making sure that everybody has access and that there's also open access for people to communicate their messages without mediators is really what's critical, and why I've been just honored to be part of this CETF family to help to bring that access to California and the world.
And Kathy, if you were to describe what you feel most